here, and happy Friday.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. So my name is Lawrence Birch. I'm your co-host for the show, and I will be monitoring things as we go. We've got all sorts of interesting things to talk about tonight. And last week we covered uh, how to become a psychic, part one. So that's what we're going to be jumping back into is more details about how to become a psychic uh, practitioner or reader. If it's something you think you might be interested in, we're going to go over that. And also, if you're watching the show and you have a question you'd like a reading, uh, you're welcome to contact us about that as well. We love doing on-air live readings for people. There's a there's a uh, live chat that goes on during the show. That's a way to reach us. So you can go ahead and contact us that way on the site. Anyway, we're glad to have you aboard. Thanks for coming along. Just as a reminder, we're here every Friday from 6 to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we also have our channel archived videos. If you'd like to take a look at those, we've got about 10 videos now to go back and take a look at different subjects that we cover. And exciting announcement, we have a guest coming on at the end of the month, and we'll talk more about that as we go along with the show tonight. But we're pretty excited to have start having guests on the show because that really expands what we can offer to our viewers and also just makes things that much more interesting. So something to look forward to. So Adrienne, before we get
Yes.
started chit chatting, maybe you can share your contact information with people so they
Oh,
know how to reach you
yeah.
after the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the very best ways to find out, my services, fees, and a little bit more about me is through my website. And that is ravenmessages.com. I'll also be happy to take a call or text at area code 714-376-7289. Um, I have a Facebook business page as well, and there's a variety of different things on there from time to time, daily postings and uh, Raven rantings. And that is uh, ravenmessages.com is the name of that Facebook page. So that's where you can find me. And
Nice.
how about you, Lawrence?
Yeah. Well, you can call me or text me at 541-344-7534. My website is givingtreefarm.com. My Facebook page is Giving Tree Farm Herb Company. And those are the best ways to reach out and get a hold of me if you'd like a reading or some shamanic healing done, or maybe an herbal consultation, uh, or all three. Lots of different options for you. So,
Yeah.
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, so how's your week been, Adrian? Sounds like you were pretty active this week, doing a variety of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I do a corporate kind of job as well. It also happens to be in the healing and helping field. For like the last 30 years, I've worked with in behavioral health care. So people needing substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment, and looking for placement in appropriate facilities. That's what I've been doing for a long, long time. So this past week, I've had an opportunity to talk to some other people, and we're talking, you know, talking phase about some new projects, and so that's been pretty exciting. And a few just wonderful readings, very interesting readings, and yeah, a little rest and relaxation, and uh, uh, trying to manage these two dogs during the thunderstorm that we had. That was
Mm,
very exciting. So,
mhm.
yeah,
Do they
it's
not
been
like
quite a
the
week.
do they not like the thunders that spook them a little bit?
Yes, they get really scared. These
Mhm,
big kids, big tough looking kids just turn
mhm,
into little marshmallows, puppies, and
mhm.
so it's just, oh boy. And
So I
they both want to like sit on my lap, or
uh,
it's like,
right,
oh God.
yeah, that's
So
funny. I had a question for you that just popped in my head while you were talking about, the work that you do. Has the cuts that have been happening in government, have those affected the behavioral health program that you're a part of, or is that pretty well insulated? Or
not that I'm a part of. There
Mhm,
is a lot of conversation going on, and there are some facilities that are quite concerned,
mhm,
about what may happen here, and there's I'm not aware of any particular closures due to any of these federal cuts, but there is definitely a fear that could be coming. So I
hmm,
don't know.
hmm. Yeah,
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 scary
hard to.
times, really, in so many ways. It's
Mm-hmm,
scary,
hmm.
but you know what? It's like I also get pretty angry too. It's just
Yeah,
it's outrageous.
frustrating. Okay, well, just thought I'd check in.
Yeah.
Um, so before we continue, just a reminder, although Adrian and myself are incredible professionals, we do want you to know that this show is for entertainment purposes only. So if you need financial, legal, medical, geological, geographical, paleontological, or scatological advice, please talk to the appropriate professional for that kind of information. All right.
Yes.
Yes. So last week we left off talking about how to become a psychic, and we had a few different things that we mentioned. Taking classes, working with a teacher or a mentor. Talked a little bit about our journey about it, and I thought there were other things worth sharing about that topic. So we're gonna go ahead and continue delving into that. Um, one of the things that I pay attention to and that I bring up in a lot of my classes are dreams, because I think dreams can often be an entry point into understanding deeper things both about ourselves and about the universe and spirit. And so uh, I have people do an exercise called lightning dream work,
Ah,
which is a technique that was developed by Robert Moss, who is a pretty well known person in the lucid dreaming field. He has a center back east, and you can look up lucid dreaming or the lightning dream work technique online. There's a variety of different places that have handouts you can download about it, or just the information. But essentially, it's a way to quickly deconstruct a dream that you have. You can do it on your own. It's nice to do it with a partner. I have people pair up in my class and just talk about dreams together. But it's nice because it doesn't impose any kind of a external interpretation on your dream that you may have had. Instead, it helps you kind of unlock your own meaning and symbolism behind it, and I find that to be really effective in helping people, uh, understand that process better and also connect with uh, themselves on a deeper level, and ultimately to spirit if that's part of their intention. I had a student last term who hadn't been able to remember a dream in decades use this technique, and they were starting to remember their dreams, which was really great. Um,
Yeah.
so paying attention to dreams. Are you somebody that remembers your dreams very much, Adrian?
I go through I go through cycles, so it seems, where I will dream and have full recollection of my dreams for, period of time, and then not so much. Um, but dreams are dreams are very powerful and provides real opportunity to obtain a lot of information, certainly about yourself and sometimes your environment as well. But I too um, like to talk with students on those occasions when I'm working with someone or teaching some uh, class on psychic development about and if we're talking about like connecting with spirit guides, connecting with loved ones on the other side, and I'll tell them, suggest to them that as they are preparing for sleep time, that they consciously uh, attempt to connect with those on the other side, to ask sometimes for specific information. They can try that, or just signs to let them know that that they are nearby and that they're connecting. And oftentimes, they will report back and they'll say, yes, I had some dreams and my mom was visiting me and we were able to talk, or this or that, or I really felt her nearby. And so yeah, dreams are just fabulous,
Mm-hmm.
fabulous way to connect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing that can be helpful to facilitate that process is to keep a dream journal,
Yeah.
and just simple notebook by the side of your bed, so that when you wake up and the dream is still fresh in your consciousness, you can jot it down. uh, of course, we also have these handy devices, and so you can do a voice memo, uh, and not have to worry about writing it down right away if you're still kind of groggy. That's
Hmm.
another way you can keep track of your dream process. But
Yeah.
if you're consistent with doing this over time, it's not uncommon to find recurring themes within your dreams, and those can be areas of exploration that can give you deeper insight into a variety of different things. People oftentimes have kind of their own language or iconography of dreams that can be very meaningful. So um, can be a real resource. So
Yeah.
uh, another thing to talk about if you're interested in becoming a psychic is to develop um, a way to listen to your inner voice. Learn how to trust yourself more, uh, and paying attention to intuitive messages that might be coming through, and a spirit that might be communicating with you. I would venture to say that the majority of us, at least in this culture, at an early age, get taught to negate those voices that come to us. You know, what's the most common thing that we get told? Hey, it's just your imagination, or you
Right.
know, you're making it up, or well, you're a kid, so let's discount all that, which is tragic, because when you're a child, you don't have those same adult filters built in to keep things out, and so you're much more permeable to all sorts of information and messages. Some of it may just be generated by your imagination, but your imagination is actually a big process, important process. That's a part of connecting with spirit, being able to envision things and open
Hmm.
up to things and be receptive
Hmm.
to things. So learning how to release that inner voice and to trust it and to call on it is a big part of developing your psychic abilities, so you don't self edit or negate things or shut things down when they're coming in. It can be difficult at first, especially if you're used to discounting whatever might be coming your way, to really free that voice and to start listening to it. But it's a really critical part of your development as a psychic and a spiritual practitioner, is to let that voice have a say in your decision making process for sure. So,
I came across a little mem on Facebook. Uh, just thought about. I'll share it. It's real simple. It just says, when you hear voices in your head, but you were born in the time period where you have to take medication for it instead of in the time where the villagers would have made you a shaman.
right.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah, well, that is unfortunately, part of what we have to deal with, which
Yes.
is uh, you know, getting told we're crazy if we start seeing or thinking or hearing or believing things outside of the accepted box.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, and I think a big part of why that goes on is there's a real fear behind it. There's still a huge stigma around mental illness in our society,
Oh, yeah.
and there's a lot of shame associated with that. And it's really no different than any other imbalance or disease process. Nobody goes around saying, oh, I'm so embarrassed that I have you know bad digestive habits, or my gallbladder isn't working as well as it should have, and I'm going to have it taken out. There's no like, oh wow, what a bad person you are for not being able to deal with that. But for some reason, we still persist in viewing people who have challenges with their mental health as really pariahs in our society, and it's just really, really unfortunate and contributes to a lot of grief and needless suffering. Really, when people often suffer in silence or alone because of it, because they're afraid to reach out. There's a lot of professions where if you admit that you're having issues with depression or maybe some other mood disorders, that you might actually lose your job, and that keeps people from seeking a lot of help. It's an apocryphal thing for soldiers to develop post-traumatic stress disorder and then not get it treated because they've been in I would say, kind of brainwashed in a way into thinking that, they can't expose their weakness, or that, it makes them a really bad soldier, which is not true at all. So, uh, you know, it's really important to advocate for people to get the mental health and counseling and if necessary, medication that they need. But it's also important to say, this is not anything that's crazy. This is just me actually opening up to something deeper and bigger than myself. And, you know, checking in to see that that's something that's authentic and not something that's, going to be problematic. I would say the easiest way to judge whether or not, the voice that you might be hearing, or voices, if there's more than one, is if they are helpful voices, if they're coming from a loving place, or they're benign in nature, they want to be helpful. Those are usually good signs that the experience that you're having is something that's involving, a spiritual awakening. Conversely, if the voices are malevolent sounding, or they're asking you to do things that are hurtful or harmful, or they're denigrating to you or diminishing in some way, that's an indication that maybe you need to talk to a professional and have that checked out, because that can escalate into something that could be really, um, unfortunate and difficult to deal with. So, have you had clients come to you, Adrian, that have talked about, having a background where they had things happen when they were younger, and then their family kind of shut that off at the base. I know you mentioned that was your experience in
Yeah,
your family
that,
unit.
yeah, that certainly was my experience. From time to time, I have had clients, report that that was also their experience growing up, or they weren't encouraged to develop, their skills.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and it's it's pretty interesting. I was also thinking about um, all of the instances for other people as well as myself, um, just being told you're too sensitive, you're
Mm.
just too sensitive, you know and I used to hear that all of the time.
Hmm.
Of course, I didn't understand. I didn't know what an empath was. I was a child,
Right.
but way too you're just too sensitive, too sensitive,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that is somewhat of a common kind of theme I've heard
Hmm.
from people,
Hmm.
um, and it seems like some of the other things too is that if children or young young people are more introverted or seem to prefer almost the company of animals, their pets, um, to people. These are other signs and symptoms that tell me that, what, that individual may indeed have some very special skills and certainly sensitivity to energy.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. The different ways people get shut down is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it tends to be gender based as well, right?
Mhm.
So uh, you know, uh, if you're female, you're going to get told you're being too sensitive, and if you're a male, you might get told that you're you know uh, being a wimp, or you're not being manly enough or strong enough.
Mhm.
If you're you know connected and empathetic with other people and individuals around you, it's easy to get affected by things, when people have mood swings or, emotional issues, or, when people are suffering or they're hurt, it can be very difficult
Mhm.
initially until you learn how to filter that out to
Mhm.
not be impacted by it and be
Mhm.
upset about it. And, that can get interpreted by your peers, especially who are, think about how much cruelty children have in their reservoir for other children. Oh my god, growing up,
Yeah.
they're just so nasty to each other, and you get told by people in your age group that you're just uh you know imagining it, or you've got a problem, or you're being a wimp, or not
Mhm.
uh you're weak in some way for having that vulnerability that allows you to connect, which
Yeah.
is just 180 degrees opposite of what really should be happening, where it should be,
Yeah.
appreciated, recognized, encouraged, strengthened, you know, protected. Hopefully, when that is what's happening with a child, that they have somebody who can look out for them and protect them from getting shut down, and
Mhm.
can help nurture that process in them. It can be really, really painful to have that be a part of your reality, and only to discover later on in life, like, maybe when you're an adult, that all this time, went on between when you were emerging as someone who's connecting to spirit, and then that just got cut out of your life because people couldn't deal with it, and
Right.
they turned you against yourself.
Mhm.
That's a real common process too, unfortunately. So
Mhm. Mhm.
not okay.
And it's really it is really so interesting. because another thing that I've found is that, shall we say, the sensitivity to energy, to being a psychic, being a healer, it runs in the families. And
Hmm.
and so that's always been one of the things that I have found to be pretty interesting, talking to people. It's like, well, yeah, I think my grandmother, was, but
Hmm.
she was always kind of different, and there was rumors that she was, but
Hmm.
so very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not uncommon for gifts to skip a generation or two. You may, and I think the other thing that happens is people sometimes don't talk about it. Sometimes families celebrate it, and it's recognized for the gift and the power that it is. But it's
Yes.
not. It's also not uncommon for families to bury it or hide it in the corner or to not talk about it or to refer to it really obliquely. So when you're growing up, you're like, oh, I didn't know that grandma was a witch. We had to figure
Right.
that out. Kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Other things about working towards becoming a psychic are finding your tools, right? And that can be a really fun part of developing yourself psychically. Uh, Sometimes, we just kind of naturally gravitate towards different tools. Sometimes they just show up in
Hmm.
our lives, and we're like, oh, this just kind of fell in my lap. What do I do with it? But there's especially these days with how widely we're all connected in different parts of the world now with each other. There are many, 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 many different kinds of tools that can help you both develop yourself as a psychic and also practice as a psychic.
Hmm.
And those can range from things that you make yourself, things you find in nature, things that you might get from another person, have them make for you, or even purchase. So, uh, there's a lot of different ways to help focus and concentrate your energy using these different divinatory tools. Do you have some favorite divinatory tools that you work with, Adrian?
Well,
Your practice?
I I like to read oracle cards,
Mm-hmm.
and I prefer them over the traditional tarot cards.
Mm-hmm.
Although I can read those as well,
Mm-hmm.
but I prefer the oracle cards because it's less structured, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, and for me, it lends more to using my intuition. And so I do that, and then I like to use pendulums from time to time,
Mm-hmm.
which are great for yes and no,
Mm-hmm.
kinds of questions. People need that kind of an answer. That's fun. And let's see. That's really, I mean, I love crystals, so I have crystals, and I do use them. I use quartz crystals quite a good bit, uh, personally, um, and then I certainly, I just love being able to recommend to clients, various crystals that they may want to, uh, go out and buy, or at least go shopping for them, and see what speaks to them and what have you. Those are
Mm-hmm.
those are it really. Not a whole lot. Uh, Debbie Hamilton, my friend, and who's also a medium. Excuse me for a second, right? Shh, shh. Sorry. um,
Mm-hmm.
Tried to show me how to use the what do you call those things? Um, they're copper. Yeah, the copper.
Uh-oh.
Um, um, You can ask questions and they go like that. There's two rods. Um,
Yeah, I have to
geez,
think about it.
I can't think of the name of them. But anyhow, I tried using those and that did not
Uh-huh.
work so well.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me for just a second. I
Okay.
a lot
Take
of
care of your
racket going
line
on. Hey,
issues. Yeah. What's happening?
come on, come on. That's enough. No, get over
Mm,
here. Sorry.
no, that's okay.
Yeah.
Got to keep the pack under control.
Yes, at least for the time being.
Right, right, right.
Sorry.
No, no, it's all
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Well, I use tarot. I got my first deck when I was 13. I like working with tarot. Um, and I was also gifted a few years ago with a crystal ball. So I use that from time to time. It's a nice kind of smoky quartz, palm
Nice.
size one. Um, and that's good for something called scrying, where you kind of look into an object. It can be anything. It can be a cloud. It can be water. It could be a mirror. That's a real common thing. Crystal ball is kind of a classic thing. And you reading tea leaves, same idea.
Yeah.
And you just kind of let the image that you're open to show up and interpret it that way. Um, people use numerology.
Hmm.
Crystals, you mentioned, definitely that's a real popular divination tool. People that are into, um, you know, Wiccan things, there's spells people use,
Right.
incantations. Um, there's runes. I had a guy that I knew for a while who was big into runes, and he used runes to cast fortunes. There's the I Ching, in Chinese belief.
Hmm.
That's some of the coin or rods that are marked in a certain way. You ask questions. Uh, pretty much every culture has some aspect of divination. Way to get a message or you know a communication through from spirit that can augment uh, you know your process. It's often nice to have something physical that you work with, uh,
Yes.
especially with clients, because it can be kind of nebulous, sitting on the other side and watching a person go through their process, and then having something physical that they can kind of focus on and feel like, okay, this is concrete. There's all the spiritual stuff happening that I really can't put a finger on, but there's this object here in front of me that's helping
Hmm.
facilitate it. Now it feels more real to me, and I'm opening up. And I would say the best thing is just to kind of play around with different things. It may take you a while before you find the right kind of tool that works for you. And sometimes tools come and go. Sometimes they stick around for a while, and you work with them, and then the energy of the power shifts and you move into something else. So
Hmm.
that's not uncommon
Hmm.
either, as part of the process.
Yes. Hmm. Hmm. And of
And
course the drum. Your
yeah,
drum. Yeah.
absolutely. Yep. Drums and rattles.
Hmm.
Yep. Bull roars, if you're Aboriginal, or didgeridoos, people use those too. I was listening to the radio the other day, and they had a guest on a show that I was listening to, and the person was talking about um, brain waves and how brains are affected by different things, and they were so excited because they were talking about how sound can affect brain waves. And I was like, yeah, yeah, science figured that out finally. The shamans have known that for thousands of years, that if you drum the right way, or if you rattle the right way, or it can happen with other things too, like watching a waterfall for a period of time. Your brain gets in sync. There's a connectivity that happens,
Yeah.
sympathetic vibration, you might say, and your brain gets literally entrained by that sound, and it can augment your process, or actually even put you into a different state of consciousness, which is pretty amazing and powerful. But yeah.
I love that.
Hmm. Yep. Pretty amazing tools. Speaking
So
of nature,
let me interrupt you for just one quick
interrupt.
second. So what I was it dousing rods.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I was going to
Yeah,
mention that.
that was it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I knew this guy who used them, and it was pretty amazing watching him. You know.
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
People use wood. Wood that's got a Y-shaped branch, crotch of a tree kind of a thing, but they also use these little metal rods
Yeah.
that look like they came from a coat hanger or something, and
Hmm.
they hold them in their hands and they swing around
Right.
just kind of
Yeah.
freely, you
Yeah.
know. And the most common thing that I've seen them used for is to locate water, but people also use them to locate lost objects
Mm-hmm.
or anything you might be looking for, even people. And they also can be used to answer yes or no questions.
Yeah.
Um, and people, I've never used it myself, but people I've talked to who have talk about an energy that they feel, oftentimes kind of coming up from the ground through them and out
Mm-hmm.
through their hands when they're doing the divinatory work. But
Mm-hmm.
pretty amazing stuff
Yeah.
watching that process. It's pretty fun. It's an ancient thing.
Absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah.
It didn't work out so well for me. I
Yeah.
I couldn't say for whatever reason. Maybe it just was a day. I don't know, but I couldn't stay particularly focused or serious
Uh-huh.
using them. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like we're talking about. They're not
yeah,
for everybody. There's something out there that you'll resonate with
yeah,
eventually. So, but it's good.
absolutely.
It's good to explore.
Yeah,
We talk about taking classes and different things, finding a teacher and a mentor. That's really important process of developing your psychic ability. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning is connecting with nature. You know, finding time to get away from all the riffraff and rabble that's happening in the human world, and to go to a place where uh, you know there's some actual non-human living beings that you can make a connection with, and just kind of you know take your shields down, be calm, go for a walk, sit by the ocean, go by a lake,
yeah,
even a park in the city can be a source of you know uh, connecting with spirit.
hmm,
Just going somewhere where it's as quiet as possible, free from human intervention, and letting things just kind of open up within you in that space. Uh, you know, some of the most important messages I've received have been in places of nature where, I'm free from distraction. There's not a lot of different, things that are going on to, occupy my attention. And I'm just allowed to let my mind eventually kind of find its medium and balance, and be open to what happens. And I think natural places are a lot or places that are a lot easier for spirit to connect with us, because they don't have as much interference that they have to you know weed through to try to get us to pay attention and to connect with us in whatever means that we're going to get the message from them. um, and sometimes we're also led to places that have power in them. Geomancy is a whole nother field, maybe we'll talk about sometime. But spiritual practitioners often talk about power spots. In fact, a friend of mine just led a group up to a power spot here in the mountains nearby the other day. And spirit is if you take time to go out into nature, at least occasionally, it's not unlikely that spirit might lead you to a power spot. And this can be a place where you can just feel the earth and the energy, and it can be a place to recharge, or to really feel deep connections, or to receive messages, or just to go and to hang out in, because it's got such good positive
hmm,
energy. There's places like that that are longing for a person to come along and make a connection with them. So nature is probably one of the biggest factors that I think somebody that's developing a spiritual practice or becoming a psychic really would do well to make a significant part of their life um, on whatever level they can. Even if it's just taking your dog for a walk, that counts too.
Yeah,
So.
I so agree with you on that. That is, it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Hmm.
And as humans, as the human species, we need to get out. We need sunlight, and it's really important. And if you're lucky, while you're in the middle of taking in a walk or swim or whatever it is that you're doing, you might, encounter some animals, you know, or birds. And sometimes you find as you go along that, that mountain lion you saw, or that raven, or that eagle turns out to be a spirit animal.
Hmm.
So you never know, but it's about allowing yourself to be out there and connecting yes.
Uh-oh. Raven.
Yes, and taking it in.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting. Yeah, well, and I think nature
Yes.
it can be a place to recharge as well.
Hmm.
I find that if I don't at least make some kind of effort to be in nature, after a few months, I just get kind of agitated and irritable and almost uncomfortable. It's like I need to make that connection with nature so that I have a chance to
Yeah.
decompress and just not, have my mind get focused so much on worldly affairs, but I get a chance to really, feel humble and
Hmm.
connected and grateful and
Hmm.
you
So
know
true.
uh, reminded of what's really important, where my values are. That the earth is, you know, despite how many changes the humans have created, it's going to continue and it's going to go on. And
Yeah.
my tiny little part in things is really, minor. And it's good to get reminded that we're animals and we're part of nature too, not some
Yeah.
kind of,
Hey, I
you know,
have a question
spiritual.
for you.
A
Um,
question.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um, w- w- I was wondering if you're able to see the moon and the stars often where you live, because out here in Irvine, California, Orange County, I can often, of course, see the moon, but not many stars. And you know, but when I do, there's that wonderful feeling of connection, that feeling of, like, yes, indeed, just humbling, um uh and gosh, just this wonderful sense of being alive and grateful. And so, anyways, do you get to see the stars very often where you live?
Well, Western Oregon is a pretty cloudy place.
Ah.
So, unless I get up to elevation or unless I head east, it can be difficult to count on getting a piece of the sky clear enough to be able to see things. The light pollution here isn't too bad, really. The community I live in, there's streetlights and things, but there's a lot of space where it's dark enough, even in the city, to be able to look up and see the stars. But
Mm.
if I really want to get um, a really great look at the Milky Way, for example, or a constellation, or just the whole bevy of light that's up there, I either need to head over to the coast and hope the weather's good there, or head east most of the time. the last camping trip I took to Central Oregon, a friend of mine and I try to do that annually, and we were out there for about a week. And one evening, my friend went to go and do his business, and in the middle of that, he looked up and he went, "Hey, come over here." And I was like, "Do you need help? What's happening?" He's like, "No, no, you got to see this." And I'm like, "Okay, I hope this isn't going to be something disgusting." And I went over there, and he said, "No, look up in the sky," and it was a comet.
Oh, wow.
Which we totally would have missed if we were back on, the other side of the Cascades, because it's just not conducive to seeing that kind of thing. But it was huge. It was, I guess, it was called the Green Comet, and it only shows up every few hundred years or something. But
Wow.
it was just really, you could see the tail, the head of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was really, and it took up a whole, section of the sky. So we looked out
Wow.
and were able to I got some good pictures and things. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was just like, oh wow, this is really, really special. So I know what you mean about, being able to see that. People that live
Mm,
in places where that's just something they can go out their front door and see, pretty much every night. They're
yeah.
very
Yeah, it's
fortunate
true.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely makes you feel
Mm-hmm.
connected. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Love it.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of experiences, this is another thing that I think can be really helpful, particularly in the beginning when you're developing your psychic or spiritual abilities, is to be open to new experiences. You know,
Mhm.
um, it's very easy for humans to get in kind of a rut with their behaviors, particularly the older you get. Maybe your
Mhm.
energy isn't what it was, or maybe you've got some injuries that preclude you from doing things that you used to be able to do in your youth or whatever. But spirit often is asking us to expand ourselves and open up to different things, and
Right.
to be present. And if you're kind of stuck in a routine, or you're not open to trying new things, it can be very difficult to really manifest a connection to spirit or develop that psychic ability, because your mind is just kind of closed off. And so, you know it's a really good thing to, you don't have to do it all the time, but from time to time, just challenge yourself a little with something that maybe is outside of your comfort zone, and
Mhm.
experience that. Maybe it's going to see the opera, and that's something you've never done before, or a play or something with a friend. Or maybe it's going to, a different part of town and checking that out and just seeing, what it's like over there. You know, Going on a trip to a place you haven't been before, having a conversation with a person just spontaneously. There's any number of creative ways to manifest inviting a mystery into your life. But the point is that mystery is a really important component of psychic development, and having the courage to try something new, to get an experience from it. Maybe you'll just learn one thing or have one thing happen, but that can be enough to spark an epiphany that can help you develop yourself psychically, and stay open and
Mhm.
welcoming to other people's experiences that may be outside of your own lifestyle and things like that. So,
It's so true.
mhm.
Now, along that same line, I remember receiving some instruction about saying yes more often.
Mhm.
And is it was really very interesting experience, because I realized how often I said no.
Uh-huh.
No, I don't want to go. No, I'm not gonna, try that. No, I
Yeah.
don't like that.
Uh-huh. Right.
There's that saying about contempt prior to investigation.
Mhm.
And which is a little strong, but nevertheless. So I remember doing that. Making a conscious decision to say yes instead of just saying no.
Mhm.
And certainly led to some wonderful experiences, wonderful food, wonderful people,
Mhm.
places, opportunities. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Right.
Which it's important to consider.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Well, a couple other things to mention. One is, when you're doing spiritual work, is to be clear about setting your intention. Right. This is a really important concept that sometimes people overlook or forget about. But why are you here? Why are you doing the spiritual work that you're doing? What's your focus? What's your
Mhm.
mission? What's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? It's very important to get clear on this before you do anything, so that during your practice or your ritual, or whatever event it is that you're doing that's of a spiritual nature, if you get off the path, first of all, you recognize that.
Yeah.
And then also, because you've already set your intention, you can come back to that intention as uh, you know a guide to completing whatever it is that you're engaging upon in the first place. Um, you know, and so it's like a lot of things. If you're not clear on what you're doing, if you haven't studied up on the process, if you're not invested and committed to it, oftentimes you don't get the results you want. And then, that can be really disappointing to whoever is participating with you in whatever spiritual activity it is. But it can also be discouraging, and it can prevent you from trying again for a better result. But I would advise people that if they find themselves in that position, go back and take a look. Was your place of beginning, the root of what your cause was that you were focusing on, was that really clear? Did you clarify that to yourself? Did you set your intention? Did you make sure that you had a vision of how this was going to begin, what was going to happen during the process, and then how you were going to close things up and you know come back to focus? And if you're noticing along the way that one of those areas wasn't really calibrated correctly, then maybe that's where you need to go back and get some clarity, so that the next time you attempt something, um, you can have a better uh, result that's closer to what your expectation was. Which is not to say that sometimes you can have a really clear expectation and idea about what's going to happen, only to find out as you engage in the process, spirit has something totally different in mind for
Mhm.
you. I know we've all done readings where we've had a client come ask us a standard kind of question. We get started talking with spirit, and spirit's like, wait a minute, this person needs to know this. So, put their question aside for now, and I want you to tell them this. And you have to be able to be like, by the way, before I get to your thing, spirit wants to tell you that, da 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 da. And then they're like, uh-oh, or whatever the reaction's going to be. But, that's kind of part of the process. you know, Quick story about setting intention. A friend of mine has done a lot of really great work in the Native American community, and he went to a traditional sweat that was done, where there's a very ceremonial way that the sweat lodge is built. The stones are gathered, the fire started, who keeps the fire, performs the sweat. And he was taking part in it with these other people, and kind of out of nowhere, in the middle of the sweat, the people leading it started saying really bigoted and homophobic things, like just kind of coming out of their mouths. And
Wow.
really unexpected unkindness. Ooh, wow, like that. Woke him up. The mailman.
Quiet.
Get him. Get him.
See, Stratton Kennel over here. So
Yeah.
I,
Well,
I, they do pretty well, and then all of a sudden something will happen.
uh,
Sorry.
no, that's all right. I mean, they were just augmenting my story. So,
Yeah.
uh, so he recognize, things are going sideways. And the thing is, when you do a traditional ceremony and you corrupt it in a way like that, it can really bring down a whole raft of hurt on you. And he left as soon as he realized that these people had really toxic views, and did a whole bunch of work to try to purify and cleanse himself afterwards, so that he didn't have any bad juju follow him. But um, that's just an example of people that had really um, unfortunate intentions during their ceremony, and they started
Yeah.
introducing a lot of really hateful energy. That is, you know, it's good to know that that's coming, and that you have a right to stand up and say, I don't agree with this, and get the hell out of there if that's necessary. But um, so crazy stuff. One
Yeah.
last thing to mention: practice. You don't get from point A to point B sitting on your behind with spiritual gifts and techniques. You may have the most intense psychic ability in the world, but you need to work on it, and you need
Mhm.
to hone it and focus it, and spend time, ideally daily or at least regularly, um, you know, working with that gift that you're trying to develop into a tool that you can use uh, to practice, good regularly. And so, you may need to study with somebody for a while. You may need to take some classes. You may need to work with the divination tools that you've found that are the ones that you want to work with for a while before you get really proficient with them. Um, work on your dreams, work with plants, whatever your modality is going to be, and then just be really dedicated about staying connected and humble, so that spirit can work with you and through you. So it's not some kind of ego trip that you're doing. We've all been around spiritual people who really haven't developed themselves spiritually, oddly enough, but they think they have a gift, and then the energy coming out of them is just really chaotic or unproductive, to say the least, because they're not really good.
Mhm.
It's just not good people. They haven't done their self work, self growth, and they
Mhm.
screw the message up, unfortunately, no matter how connected they may come across. So you want to be careful not to follow in those footsteps, but to stay on a path of
Yeah.
humility and love and kindness, and realize that your gift is here for you to provide a service to people, not to enrich yourself at other people's expense, or to pass curses on to people, or all the other weird crazy stuff that happens in the world of psychics. So hopefully that will not be you, but
Right.
you never know.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Any we're coming to the end of the show, my friend. So any thoughts on that, or anything else you want to bring up, or anything else
No,
that
but
comes to mind?
I was thinking that maybe maybe next week or at
Mhm.
some point in time we can also discuss fees.
Uh-huh.
Do psychics and healers uh, uh, charge money? And if they
Mhm.
do, why?
Mhm. Yeah.
uh, so I mean, I think that that's kind of an important topic
Mhm.
to at least give a little bit of time to.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's good periodically to talk about, what can you expect when you have a psychic session,
Yeah.
and what how to how to know that the psychic you're working with is somebody that you want to continue to work with, or
Right.
if
Mhm.
it's time to say goodbye and move on to somebody else. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely, I think that's a good topic to
Mhm.
bring up for
Mhm.
sure. Beneficial.
Mhm.
So Adrian, what's a good way to get in touch with you, and are there any events you want to let people know about, or anything
Yeah.
happening?
Um, Let me think. So, as far as any upcoming events,
Hmm.
I don't have anything scheduled until towards the end of the month, which is the OC Heart Space um, event in
Mm-hmm.
Laguna Woods.
Mm-hmm.
And I always look forward to that. I'll have more information on that coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I know there is an event. It was on Facebook in Oceanside
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow, as a matter of fact, from 12 until 6. I
Hmm.
I'm not going to be there as a um, vendor or healer, but I'm thinking about going.
Oh,
So yeah, so there's that. But as far as my contact information, I do readings in person as well as Zoom and telephone sessions. And you can find my information through my website. It's probably the best. And that is ravenmessages.com. Call me or text me at 714-376-7289. How about you, Lawrence? How do people find you?
yeah. You can call me or text me at 541-344-7534. My website's givingtreefarm.com. There's a lot of good information on there about what I do, my herbal services, shamanic practice that I have, classes I may be offering, products, readings, the whole kit and caboodle. My Facebook page is another place to check out and keep in touch, and that's Giving Tree Farm Herb Company on Facebook. So, any one of those things. And of course, make sure you come back here every week so you can enjoy spending time with us here at the Psychic Funhouse. Uh, we love having our audience members take part. And,
Yep.
if you're feeling the urge to send in a love donation, we can always accommodate that. We're-
I love that.
None of this is for free. So, I'm sure we need, a new church
Yeah,
somewhere that we need
yeah,
to build, or a new airplane to get us from coast to coast, or,
that's right.
you know, gold toilet we have to build in the bathroom. So,
Yeah,
but mostly we just love having our new friends come and find us, and our old friends come back and see us again. And we're here every Friday from
yep,
6 to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we have lots of videos that we're starting to accumulate now in between shows you can take a look at. And like I mentioned, we will be having a guest probably by the end of the month come on. It's somebody we've had on our previous show on Blog Talk coming back, who's volunteered to show up, and hopefully that will be the start of several wonderful guests we'll have over the summer
yes, indeed.
for you to really enjoy and take part in. So, alrighty. Well, on behalf of the whole Psychic Funhouse crew, wishing you a lovely evening and have a great weekend. Thank you, Adrienne, for all the wonderful stuff you do,
Oh, thank
and
you.
for another
Thank
good
you,
show.
Lawrence.
Yep, yep. This
Have a
is
good weekend.
yeah, you too. This is Lawrence and Adrienne signing out for now. We'll see you next time.
Okay. See you soon.
All right, bye bye, everybody.
Bye.